Hi, how's your dog doing? Linus wants to become a polyglot, but he's nervous he can't, coping, instead saying that you can only learn 1 to 2 languages well, and all the others will be terrible. Marcus Aurelius, on the other hand, understands the power and abilities of humanity, knowing he could achieve what he wants. So while I haven't personally encountered this problem in my own life, in terms of language learning in many other regards, and probably implied with language learning, many people have told me that I should specify down to like 1, 2, 3 things. So, I've been told this a lot for years upon years upon years before I, started fully accepting myself as a polymath and a polyglot to be. I wanted to really listen to their advice and think, I should just pare everything down, try to get down to a couple of things I can be really good at. Until then I realized something. The world right now heavily promotes specialization. They want to have us get down and focus on 1 to 2 things, something around there. If you go back looking through history, you'll see that many well-known, famous, successful, and impactful people in history don't just focus on one thing and just do that. They tend to combine their knowledge from many different fields and their abilities to create a different perspective of the world and a more rich one. So why do people want us to specialize like this? Why do they want us to essentially become ants? I don't think it's any kind of malice. I don't think people are, evil or anything. They're not, these evil type people we should have everyone just focus on one thing. I think it just comes from the natural human desire to categorize things. Finding patterns, categorizing, getting things down so they can be easily classified in our minds. It's a lot harder for us to have many perspectives on one thing, or to have a combined perspective. And one way I think this manifests, just to bring up something here, is with Tokipona. Most languages have a word for a concept that will be pretty specific. Now sure, technically it could be more and more specific, but the point is that it's more specific than Tokipona, so people don't kind of realize that. So what people don't really realize is that for Tokipona, it still has categories, just they're a little more broad than we'd normally like for them to be. Because again, we have this desire to categorize things and to put them in neat little boxes. Instead of having more general terms, more broad concepts that encompass a wide range of things. And while they certainly can give us better perspectives or novel ideas, it's just a lot easier to think about it as this thing is this thing, not this thing is this, and this, and this, and this, and they can all be this at the same time. And you combine this with another thing to get this perspective on it. It's a lot harder to do that for our minds. It's a lot easier just to see this is one thing, this is a tree, and this is grass, rather than them just both always being referred to as some type of plant, even though you can get as specific as you want in Tokipona. So I'm not saying that it's bad that we want to categorize things. That's pretty helpful. That's how you get things like binomial nomenclature. That's how we can, describe things and actually somewhat distinguish them. But I do think it's important that we can do many things and combine them together. Personally, I don't want to just say, I'm blank. I don't want to just say, I am a YouTuber. I don't want just that to be who I am. I want people to kind of have that multi-perspective view of me that I do many different things as well. I mean, it's fair if you think I'm just a YouTuber right now because you don't really know that much about what I do, but I do other things as well, especially if this is your first video you've seen from me. I'm very interested in music as well, but I don't really talk about that here on this channel. I do compose, by the way, just for fun, just for extra details on my life. So to some people, I am seen more as a composer. To some people, I'm seen more as a philosophical type of person. To some people, I am seen more as a musician, I guess. To some people, Some people, I'm just a linguistics and language more oriented person. To some people, I am just an athlete. To some people, I'm just a lot of things to certain people, and personally, I'd prefer to be known as all those things together. I don't just do one of these things in one context. I'm just done. One thing I do can inform a completely separate thing that I do. Well, maybe they're not separate. Maybe they're together. Now, aside from that little tangent I was going on, which technically should probably belong in more of a polymathy type video, but let's get on with it. So what we can kind of do here to combat this specialization, categorization thing is essentially to use language learning to gain a greater perspective on things for our own benefit. So this essentially manifests itself in becoming multilingual and gaining a great knowledge of many other languages. Now, I'm not saying you have to be fluent, but I'm saying you should have a knowledge of them. You can be a philologist, which philology is, it's a field. Just kidding, there's something wrong with philology. Philology is actually pretty cool, but essentially philology is just the study of a specific, as essentially the study of a specific language or maybe a language family. Like, it's just, yeah, that's just what philology is. It just uses a lot of things like historical facts and linguistics to kind of study a language. Just generally, I think it's pretty interesting, but I think just having philological, it's a weird word to say, but I think if we have some philological knowledge on many other languages, we can notice some connections between them, or even on a family that can help as well. For a good example that I believe I've used before, but I can't exactly recall where, in many Romance languages and in Latin as well, where they all come from, the word for a storm is generally something like tormenta, which sounds like torment, doesn't it? Well, I'm sure you can kind of see the connection here. At least in kind of Western European culture, storms are seen as torturous things, or they're seen as a torment or a bother or a nuisance or something negative, whereas maybe in another culture they might be seen as good things. They might even be revered. You never know. So how can we actually go about becoming a multilingual and gaining all this knowledge of other languages? Well, first off, I'd recommend to use the natural language to actually acquire these languages rather than just learn them. Learning them is more akin to philology, learning things about them and, being able to kind of look at them and understand them, whereas acquisition is actually like truly understanding language, being immersed in the culture, being able to speak in it, think about it in your head, like in the language, and actually being able to use it just like you use your native language. So if you want to take a first step there, I recommend that you learn Toki Pona. I should probably make a video about why you should learn Toki Pona first, but that's for another time. And like I just mentioned, philology would also be a great way to just gain some knowledge of other languages without having to actually spend a while acquiring them and being fully immersed in the culture. Like, if you're just kind of interested in it, go into that. Just study some of the grammar or something, vocabulary, stuff like that. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful in some way. I know it probably feels kind of weird and not very structured and rushed, probably a little bit, but that is because I'm recording this at 11 p.m. after I just got home. So I was like, I need to get to work. So that's why this might not be as structured as other videos. So sorry about that. With some more important news, please don't leave right now. This will actually be pretty important. I might start doing some coaching calls, like paid coaching calls for fun. So whenever I put this in the description, if you want to schedule one for me, probably an hour. I'll work on the pricing. I don't know about that, but if you have any troubles or any questions about Toki Pona or becoming a polyglot or a polymath, I'll be more than willing to do that. I'm not going to take too many clients. I don't want to film up my schedule like that because I do a lot of other things too. So I'll probably take one person for Toki Pona, one person for polymathy, and one person for polyglottism. So it's pretty limited. So if you really want to do it, check it out. See when you can get a time. That'd be pretty cool. It'd be a great way to support me and the channel. Maybe I can hire an editor so I can finally add some more edits to these videos instead of taking 5 years to do them myself. So just some things to consider. So if you'd like to do that, that'd be really cool. But other than that, I don't really have much else to say. So tell your dogs to tie.